You are listening to the podcast When Life Gives You Lemons, presented by me, Emma Levy. Having worked with elite athletes for most of my career, it's always intrigued me that a significant number of high-performing individuals have encountered some form of adversity earlier in their lifetime. My fascination into this grew when I had my own brush with adversity when I was diagnosed with breast cancer in May 2020, in the midst of the global pandemic at the age of only 36. During this period, I questioned whether it was by my positive mindset or maybe something deeper which enabled me to bounce back, to train and compete for a triathlon just 1 month following completion of all active cancer treatment. The goal of this podcast is to explore this concept further by meeting a variety of high-performing individuals who have experienced adversity but who have come back stronger. Today, I'm welcoming Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy to the podcast. Sharmeen is a double Oscar award-winning film director and journalist. She is also the only female director to have been awarded 2 Academy Awards by the age of 37 and the first Pakistani to win an Oscar. Sharmeen is not only acclaimed for her work in documentaries, which often centre on human rights and gender equality, but she has directed 2 episodes of the Marvel superhero TV series and has now been appointed as the director of the new Star Wars film, making her the first female and person of colour to be given that role. Sharmeen is the recipient of many honours and awards over the years. One that I thought was pretty cool to mention was that she has been included in Time magazine's 100 most influential people in the world. On a personal level, what may become apparent throughout this interview is that Sharmeen and I actually go way back. Our fathers were close friends, meeting in the textile industry and forming a firm and I suppose unlikely friendship in the 80s, which would see our 2 families often meeting in London. And I even attended Sharmeen's wedding in Karachi. And let me tell you, that was the most incredible week. And I have some amazing memories of the parties, the food, the clothes. But the purpose of today is not to reminisce, but I want to ask Sharmeen about her life and incredible work and how she found the determination, strength and power to forge such a successful career in the film industry as a Pakistani female. Sharmeen, sorry for the long introduction.
Thank you for having me, Emma.
Thank you so much for coming. I'm really, really looking forward to this chat. I remember attending the premiere of your Oscar award-winning film, Saving Face, back in 2012 and feeling back then really inspired by your success. So tell me, I've listed some of your incredible achievements. Do you have a career highlight so far?
I think my career highlight has been when I have impacted legislation, when I have used film to push the boundary in my home country of Pakistan. In 2016, I did a film which was called A Girl in the River, which was about honor killing. Honor killings are the terminologies used by men who kill women because they have transgressed some unwritten rule. You know, a young woman decides to get married in her own free will, or she decides to get a divorce and her uncle or father or husband feel like she has dishonored them and they will murder her for that. And, you know, when I made this film, there was no specific legislation that dealt with honor killing, which meant that if a father killed his daughter, other family members could forgive him because we have a concept in Islam of blood money, which is that you can forgive murder in lieu of money. And that sort of is a very ancient concept that was there in order to, you know, to level things in case people need the money when someone who has been a breadwinner in the family is killed. But in a modern day sense, it was being abused. And so we wanted to use the film to push legislation that would make sure that the perpetrators of honor killings would go to jail, that there would be no forgiveness or blood money in that.
And that's the film? Am I right in saying you won an Academy Award for it? And in your speech, you thanked the Prime Minister.
That is absolutely. I thanked the Prime Minister of Pakistan and put the onus on him because I knew the telecast was live and that, hundreds of thousands of people around the world were watching, that the Prime Minister of Pakistan had pledged to change the law. And lo and behold, he did change the law about 6 months later. I've always found in my career that you need to hold people accountable and really say it. as it is, sometimes when you are, on this world stage and you say things, people are compelled to do things. And I found that in that case, that was very much what happened.
So how did he change the law? What changed?
So there was a loophole in the law that allowed for forgiveness. The legislation that we wanted to push would close that loophole. And that's exactly what we did. And his political party at that time, the Prime Minister's political party, controlled the parliament that allowed him to have the numbers that was needed to pass that legislation.
That's amazing. And tell me, growing up in Karachi as a little girl, did you think you were going to have this impact?
I grew up in a household where I was always asking questions and difficult questions. And, I have led a life in which I, as a woman, as a young girl, could go to school, had access to education, had protection from my family. I was allowed to follow my dreams, and so many young women around the world, including in my own home country of Pakistan, do not have the same opportunities. I found at a very young age, I think I was 10, when I first realized that there was a lot of inequality, and that made me very angry. And the anger led to questions that no one wanted to answer, because, when you're older, you're used to the inequality. You just sort of feel that it's par for the course. For a 10-year-old, it's not par for the course. And so I would ask these difficult questions, and my mother would say, one day she got really fed up with my questioning and said, "You should write about this." And I became a print journalist when I was 14 years old. I started putting my questions to my home, to my country, to my people, asking them, why does this inequality exist? And I think that's when my early sort of seeds of being a difficult person, a difficult woman, was born. And I say that with a lot of pride, because I feel like being a difficult woman, never taking no for an answer, has allowed me to have a career in which I have kicked open doors that have previously been closed for women.
Yeah, because I remember growing up in Pakistan, you had several sisters, and I seem to remember your dad often joking, like, when's the boy going to come?
Absolutely.
I do remember that. So do you think gender inequality was a thing in your household or wider out in Pakistan?
I think my parents brought us up as their sons, but there was this inherent sort of feeling that something was missing because my father didn't have a son. And we all wanted to make sure that he never felt that he didn't have a son. And so we pushed ourselves harder to fill that void. And I think when we got older, he became so used to the fact that he didn't have a son. He treated us like his sons. Eventually, he did have a son when I was 21 years old. But I think because we were trying to fill that void, because we wanted to feel like, why do you need a son? You have daughters. They're equally good, that we kept pushing ourselves more and more and more. And I felt like he never said, no, you can't do that, or you can't do this. And I think that somewhere in between us pushing and him giving us the space, my sisters and I, all of us are working women. All of us, have achieved something in our lives. And all of us are living the lives that we feel that we deserve, that are empowered, that we make our own decisions. Sometimes when people look at Pakistani women and they ask me, how free are Pakistani women? And my answer to that always is, freedom lies in the wings your parents and your family give you.
Yeah. I think that's a really interesting point, actually. And as a documentary maker, you amplify the voices of marginalised communities around the world. And often these communities have no one else speaking out for them. So you spoke about the 2016 A Girl in the River, about honour killings. And then there was the victims of acid attacks, wasn't there? That was Saving Face in 2012. So have there ever been any times where you've kind of put yourself at risk and you've been scared or physically threatened? Or tell me about that.
When I became a documentary filmmaker, I was in my 20s. And, when you're in your 20s, you think you're invincible. not, you just feel you're invincible. I think it's the power of being young. And so I made a film in Afghanistan and in Iraq and in Syria and East Timor. I often found myself in conflict zones or post-conflict zones. And I never thought about the danger. I always thought about the story and how that story was going to affect change. Because very early in my life, I realized that film has the power to change the way people see things, that I wasn't just a filmmaker, but that I could be a conduit for people who were change makers, or I could be a change maker using film to achieve something. And so in my 20s, when I was trapezing around the world, I was only thinking about how the films I was creating were going to change the way people see things. And I think now that I look back at the work that I've done, or I sometimes, if I'm watching a clip, I think back to that time and I'm like, I cannot believe that I did that. I mean, I put myself in danger knowingly, unknowingly, but I did. But, at that particular time, I did not recognize that danger.
Really? You just didn't feel it?
I didn't feel it. And, Emma, it's interesting because when you speak to journalists who are young and who are chasing a story or who are just starting out in their careers, they're very optimistic. They think they can change the world. And I think it's a combination of feeling invincible, optimism that your story is going to impact something and change things that fuel you, that become your armor, that you envelop yourself in, and you just keep soldiering on. And when age is more on your side and you have a few white hairs and you're sitting one day and thinking about your life, and then you begin to piece things together and you're like, oh, that was a trap, or oh, I could have really been kidnapped or killed in that situation. But at that time, I wasn't thinking about that. Yeah. I was really thinking about the people I was making a film about and who they were and how my film was going to hopefully change things for them.
Do you think becoming a parent changed you?
I think becoming a parent did change me. It made me softer, but I don't think that it was just that, because when I became a parent the first time, I was 32 years old, and I was still doing some work that I would consider borderline dangerous. And I think it was when I was in my late 30s that one day it really just hit me that putting yourself in danger all the time is like playing Russian roulette. And so I still speak out. I still put myself in situations which people would think are dangerous. But I put a lot of thought into them now. I just don't pick up my bag and go. I think about them.
So was your main goal always to make a change?
I think from the time that I became a print journalist, it was about empathy, holding up a mirror to society, and changing the way people saw issues. And that has always been my core. So a lot of things have changed, but that has always been the core of my work. And I realized in 2006, when I was making a film in the Philippines called City of Guilt. It was about access to contraceptives for poor women. The Philippines is a Catholic country where they limit the access of contraceptives to women. And as we know, the poorer you are, the harder it becomes for you. And the story was about these entire neighborhoods where women have 5, 6 children. One is breastfeeding, 2 are on their hips, 4 are around them. And they just don't know how to stop having children. And the story was about how now many women, when they got pregnant, they would have herbs, or they would go into backstreet clinics to get abortions. And it was really the dark side and the underbelly of poverty. and helplessness, and how religion is sort of used in some way to justify that. And Likan, which was a non-profit organization that was working to provide women with contraceptives, and was part of the film, used that film to lobby the government to bring about change, and showed them that the alternative was that women would find themselves in unsafe places and they would die. And when I saw Likan doing that in 2006, I thought to myself, oh, my film is not just a film. It can be used in other ways. And that's where it planted the seed in my head that I could use film to affect change.
But with that comes as well, like I've heard you say, that you're known in your country for highlighting issues which make men feel very uncomfortable. So how has that gone down with your Pakistani friends and family?
I will say that my work generally makes men uncomfortable, Pakistani and otherwise, because I work so much around the world. I think that my father, who was very amused that I had decided to become a print journalist, and he always thought I would step into textiles. When I was 17 years old, I had gone undercover and I did this story for a local newspaper. And when that story was printed, it angered a lot of people, and they decided to spray paint my name and my family's name with unspeakable profanities on our front gate, in our neighborhood, sort of around. And the article came out on the morning of the Muslim holiday of Eid, which meant that everything was closed, and also on Eid people go out and visit family members, so everybody was going to be out and everyone would see it. And it was done to shame my family and to shame me into silence. And my father said something to me that day. He said, if you speak the truth, I will stand with you, and so will the world. And then he got a group of people together and they whitewashed the walls.
Wow.
And that to me meant that it was okay to speak the truth, that it was okay to make people uncomfortable, that at the heart of it, it was important to speak the truth, and that someone would always have my back. And I think that the more people get angry about the work that I do, the more it riles them up, the better I sleep at night. Because I think that my work is affecting change, that it's pushing uncomfortable buttons, that people are finding themselves, that people are in discomfort because of something they've seen or heard me say. And I want them to be in discomfort, because the world has become such a bifurcated place. It's all about us and them. And if making people uncomfortable and holding up a mirror to society will make them realize that we are all a singular, we're all part of a singular humanity, then my job is done. And so, of course, my work makes people upset and it riles people up, but it also allows young girls to dream. It also shows the champions, both men and women who champion for change, that change is possible, that they have allies. So I continue to do that work.
And so your family are obviously proud of what you've done in your work. Are you proud of yourself?
My family are very proud of what I've accomplished in my life. I think I'm proud of myself. I think that I have come from a country that has no film industry really to speak of. I charted my own path. I became the architect of my own life. I sort of found my calling, and no one really told me that here's the yellow brick road that you take. I just chose the films and the subjects that spoke to me and my heart, and I built upon that, and I kept building and building and building, and eventually I came to sort of a path where I began to believe that it doesn't matter who you are or where you come from. If you work hard, the universe will reward you.
Yeah. And have you got any initiatives going in Pakistan? Are you inspiring other women in film?
I started a funding and mentorship program for young women in Pakistan called Pataha Pictures. Pataha means firecracker. And my whole ethos is to create the next generation of firecrackers in my home country. And so in the last year and a half, we funded 15 films, 30 filmmakers in Pakistan, and we're providing them with funding and mentorship and creating, hopefully, an ecosystem for the next generation of truth seekers and storytellers in Pakistan. I'm also started an artist residency called Neela Asman, which means blue sky. Neela Asman is situated in the mountain ranges of Pakistan. Pakistan is the only country in the world where 3 mountain ranges meet: the Hindu Kush, the Himalayas, and the Karakoram. And at the heart and then the base of those 3 mountains is an artist residency that I've created, where artists from around the world, as well as Pakistan, can come together. They could be anyone from philosophers and climate change warriors to astronomers to visual artists to writers. And it's really to create an oasis and a transfer of skills.
So you're obviously proud of your Pakistani heritage.
Absolutely. You know, I think it's so important to give back to the community that provided you with the strength to stand on your own 2 feet. I also think that I am a vessel of some sort where I basically live between many worlds. I live in Pakistan, but I also live part-time in London and New York and a lot of other places. And that I've had so many opportunities, so many doors have opened for me. And I need to open doors for other women. It is extremely important to do that.
Yeah. How do you marry that pride in your Pakistani heritage with some of the atrocities that you're dealing with in your films, like the honor killings and the acid attacks? How do you marry that in your head?
I think about the fact that everywhere in the world there is good and there is bad, and that bad is born out of circumstances, that at birth all human beings are equal, that it is the opportunities that present themselves, the paths that we take, the environment that is around us, that fuel who we become. Some of us have more opportunities. Some of us are exposed to things. We have education and employment and sort of a forward-thinking approach. Others are regressive because they've lived in a dark world where no one's ever shown a light for them, that they haven't had an education or a well-rounded worldview, and that their choices are limited because of the exposure that they've had, and the paths that they choose are regressive because of that. And I know and feel that since human beings are inherently good, that with exposure, with a work, with someone taking a torch and shining a light, that people will blink many, many times in the light because they've never been exposed to it, but one day they will open their eyes. Yeah. And that's what I continue. That's why I continue to do the work that I do. I often put myself in the position of people, and I think to myself, what would I have done if my life was different? If I didn't have the choices that I was given, if I didn't have education, if my family had not supported my dreams, if I was born on the other side of the tracks, if I was born in a war-torn country, if I was born in a country where I wasn't allowed to get an education by law, or if I was not allowed to drive, or if I wasn't allowed to exist because I was a woman, if I just was not even given basic human rights because of my gender. Fortunately, I was presented with an array of opportunities. Yeah. And so I need to take that and in some way give back.
And you feel hopeful that change is going to continue in a positive fashion?
I think the world is becoming a much darker place now than it ever has been. I think that the forces that want to divide us are far more vocal than the forces that want to unite us. And I think that it is at times like this that we need to look back at our history and we need to champion those voices in our past that have been beacons of hope, because there have been dark times in the world before this, and there have been champions of hope that have led the way. And so now it is incumbent upon our generation to do that. And so I always have hope. I think it's important to have hope. And I think it's important to speak out about hope, and it's important to amplify the voices of people who you know will have an impact on the minds of young people. And that's what film does, is amplify the voices of people.
Yeah, and I think it's people like you and the changes that you've made in things like legislation which give us hope. So thank you. You come from a close-knit family. Your dad was an amazing man. I met him obviously a number of times. He was a force of nature. I probably describe him once met, never forgotten. And tragically, he died very young of cancer when he was 59, I think. Did his death impact you as a person, as a filmmaker?
I think that his death really impacted me. I was pregnant with my first daughter, and I didn't see very much of my father because he had cancer and he was being treated in London, and I was in Canada having a baby. And because I was pregnant, they kept a lot of that away from me. And because they wanted to protect me, it was my first child, it was their first grandchild. So they wouldn't tell me all the information that the eldest daughter should know. And so I didn't really realize how quickly my father was deteriorating. And so his death really impacted me personally, because I just thought that he would be around for a lot longer. He was such a force of nature for all of us. But I think I dealt with that death in a funny way, because I have always found solace in my work. And so he passed away in September, at the end of September. And I went back to work. I had Amelia, my elder daughter, in July. My father died in September, and I went back to work in October. And I just went straight into making Saving Face. That film changed the trajectory of my life, because it bought me my first Academy Award. And that was a film that I had. I have a co-director, Daniel, and he had reached out to me when I was pregnant, and he had said, do you want to do this film? And I had said, oh, this is not a good time for me because I'm pregnant, and my father's not well, and I don't think I'm going to do this film. And then within a span of 3 months, everything changed, and he reached out to me again, and I said, yeah, I would like to do the film. And I think that film did save me in some way, because it was a tough film to do, and I was dealing with a lot of adversity over there, because it was there was adversity because this is a story that no one wanted told. And it was also personally difficult for me because the women were disfigured. So to wake up every morning and to go and film these women who, by the way, were remarkable, because despite their disfiguring, they would be smiling and laughing. And I would watch them and I would think, look at their lives. They are living from surgery to surgery, yet they're finding joy in peeling apples and sharing a joke with their daughter and with the world around them. And that I found hope by watching them. I think they healed me in some way. And I think the film just allowed me to sort of walk through the morning in a much quicker fashion than I would have otherwise.
Yeah. So do you think somehow through the grief of losing your dad, that drove you towards that path?
Yes. Absolutely, it did, because I didn't know how to handle my father's death, and I just threw myself in work, and I threw myself in this community, and the community was women, and they were struggling, and I was trying in some way to be solace to them, but really they were being a solace to me.
Yeah. So again, I have so many conversations like this with this podcast where out of adversity does come something positive.
Absolutely. I think that what came out of this adversity was a lesson, a life lesson, that whatever life throws at you, you need to take that, you need to embrace it, and you need to find the strength to deal with it.
Yeah. When life gives you lemons.
When life gives you lemons.
So Sharmeen, from documentaries to the Marvel franchise to Star Wars, which is unbelievable, how did Star Wars come about?
I have been wanting to, as a storyteller, I dabble in many mediums. I worked in documentary films, I've created animations, I worked in virtual reality, and live action just seemed like a natural sort of foray for me. And when I did Miss Marvel, I was most excited about the fact that we were giving birth to a superhero who was brown and Muslim, and really shattering the stereotypes we all hold about who a superhero can be, what she can look like, and where she can come from. And millions of young men and women around the world saw a reflection of themselves in Miss Marvel. And I think out of that came Star Wars, because, Star Wars is such an interesting step forward, but in so many ways it isn't, because my entire career has been about heroes, and it's about heroes facing adversity, and it's about them overcoming those adversities. And that's what Star Wars is about. It's about heroes. It's about adversity. It's set in this space opera, but really, if you distill it, it's about relationships. It's about family, and it's about perseverance, and good and bad, and the dark and the light.
Were you a fan of Star Wars growing up?
I was a fan of Star Wars. Was I a Star Wars diehard, live by nerd? No, I wasn't. But I really had a lot of respect for what George Lucas had done with Star Wars, the messaging, the story, the visual effects, and how it excited children especially, and adults, but how it brought young people into the cinema. And my whole career has been about trying to get young people to watch films and see things and affect change in some way. And I'm excited to take the franchise forward.
Yeah. When is the release date? Or is that a secret? Are we talking years, though? You now work on this for years. Wow. Here's a little secret. I don't think I've ever seen a Star Wars film.
Well, you might have to now,
yeah,
Emma.
Exactly. I'll have to see the new one. So when you've achieved so much in your career, where do you go next? You might not even be thinking beyond Star Wars, but do you think there'll be more documentaries in the future, or do you know where you're going to go?
I think I will always, at the heart of it, be a storyteller, and I'll find the medium that is needed to tell the stories that I want to tell. I have never planned my life, Emma. If you had asked me in my 20s, what is it that you want to achieve? Probably wouldn't have been able to give you an answer. You're asking me in my mid-40s, what is it that I'm going to aspire to become? I have no idea. What I will say is that I want to leave a legacy behind where where young women who walk the path that I have taken don't have glass ceilings. Know they can direct big budget Hollywood films. Know they can win Academy Awards. Know they can impact legislation. Know they can open doors for other women. Plant the seeds for the next generation of filmmakers and storytellers. That is what I want my legacy to be. So perhaps I'm not looking as much forward as I am about the path that I am laying for others to walk on.
Yeah, I love that concept as well, because I've said before that sometimes I think people set too many goals and then you don't enjoy the process. So we have to think about the now, and we have to enjoy the now, because if we think about what's to come, then, before you know it, you haven't enjoyed what you're doing. So that's really inspirational. I can't finish this interview without asking you about interviewing Oprah Winfrey.
I grew up watching Oprah like all of us did and being so inspired by it. But one thing I learned from Oprah by watching her is how she approached her subjects with empathy. And she made everyone feel very comfortable. And when I interviewed her, immediately when I was interviewing her, so much of what I had seen her do was playing through my mind. What a force of nature. What an incredible woman. Now that's a woman that has shattered so many glass ceilings. It was such a privilege and an honor to interview her. At the end of the interview, she gave me a hug when she found out that I was going to be the first person of color, the first woman to direct a Star Wars film. She was just like, you go, girl.
Career highlight, maybe?
Career highlight.
Yeah, unbelievable. I do on this podcast, I ask my guests if they feel they are resilient people. Do you feel you are resilient?
I think the question really is, why do we have to be resilient? Why is it that we have to be made to walk on coal all the time? I think, of course, I'm resilient. I've seen so much in my life, and every sort of adversity I've faced has in some way made me stronger. But I think it's also made me weaker in other ways. Each one of us have a few fights in us, and they should be spaced out. They shouldn't all be together. Because it leaves you, weak and sort of unable to care for yourself. At the heart of all of this is we can only affect change if we are well, if we take care of ourselves. And so when I think about resilience, I think about things that knock you off your feet, and you find the strength to stand up again. And I don't want to be knocked back on my feet. I think I would like to take the next, 10 years of my life in my mid-40s to break glass ceilings, to go to new heights, to be exhilarated, not resilience.
Okay. Yeah, see, whereas I would say we all get knocked down, and it's that resilience that allows us to come back up, like you said.
Yeah.
So if we didn't have the resilience, would we come back up?
I think everyone has some level of resilience. I've had a lot of resilience. I've had to deal with a lot of adversity that has come my way. And I'm a little tired. I'd like to enjoy this time, create the films that I want to create, leave a legacy, build institutions so that long after I'm gone, other people learn film and become artists, and there is an ecosystem that lives beyond me. So I hope that I don't have to be resilient anytime soon, is what I'm trying to say.
So you're basically saying you don't want to have to be resilient.
I don't want to have to be resilient.
Yeah.
But I am resilient, but I don't want to have to be resilient.
Yeah, as in you've had enough adversities, let me kind of get on with it now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I feel like I've paid my dues. I've paid my dues, I was a brown Muslim woman, and I've paid my dues, and I just want to now sort of say thank you very much. I just want to march on now.
Yeah. And if you could go back in time to when things were like at their toughest, when you were really going through thick adversities, what do you wish you could have told yourself?
I wish I could have told myself that it'll be all right.
Yeah, because it is.
Exactly.
Sharmeen, where can people find you if they want to know more?
Well, my work is all over, but my production company, SOC Films, has a YouTube page, SOC Films. If you Google my name, tons will pop up. We have Instagram, Facebook. We're always putting content out. Miss Marvel is on Disney Plus. Yeah. I've done a lot of documentary films on HBO. So they're all over the place.
Yeah, I actually found one of your documentaries. I watched The Girl in the River on YouTube.
Yeah. So YouTube also has a lot of my stuff on it.
And I highly recommend it to anyone listening. Thank you, Sharmeen, for talking to us today. I think you're an inspiration to young people that if you work truly hard, you can achieve your dream. So thank you.
Thank you.
What an amazingly inspirational woman Sharmeen is. If you enjoyed that episode, please share it with your friends and please rate, review and subscribe to When Life Gives You Lemons, and check back in next week for another amazing episode.